On an ordinary morning in the early 1930s, millions of people woke up believing that the rules they had relied upon had quietly changed. Jobs that once seemed stable disappeared, banks that had stood in communities for generations closed their doors, and families who had carefully followed the financial advice of their era discovered that prudence alone could not shield them from large systemic forces. What made the Great Depression so psychologically powerful was not only the scale of economic hardship, but the way it permanently altered how people thought about money, security, and risk. When we study periods of financial crisis, there is often a temptation to search for simple lessons or easy predictions. Yet history rarely repeats itself in exact form. Instead, it reveals recurring patterns in human behavior. The Great Depression serves as one of the clearest examples of how economic systems and financial psychology influence each other in powerful feedback loops. Understanding these patterns can help us better recognize the emotional forces that shape financial decisions during times of uncertainty. Before the stock market crash of 1929, the United States experienced a period of remarkable economic optimism. Technological innovation expanded rapidly, consumer credit became increasingly accessible, and participation in financial markets grew. Many individuals who had never invested before entered the stock market, often borrowing money through margin accounts that amplified both potential gains and potential losses. Confidence became widespread, and with confidence came the belief that prosperity represented a new normal rather than one phase within a larger economic cycle. The market decline that began in 1929 did not immediately transform into the Great Depression. Instead, a sequence of interconnected events gradually intensified economic stress. Falling asset values weakened confidence, reduced spending affected businesses, business failures increased unemployment. Rising unemployment reduced household purchasing power even further. Banking instability encouraged depositors to withdraw funds, creating additional strain throughout the financial system. Each reaction influenced the next, demonstrating that economies function not merely through numbers on balance sheets, but through collective expectations and behaviors. This interaction between psychology and systems remains relevant today. Economic activity depends heavily upon trust. Consumers trust that income will continue. Businesses trust that customers will return. Financial institutions trust that obligations will be honored. Governments trust that markets will function with relative stability. When confidence deteriorates rapidly, even rational protective behaviors can contribute to broader instability. Saving more aggressively during uncertain times may benefit an individual household, yet if millions simultaneously reduce spending, economic activity can contract further. Economists sometimes refer to this dynamic as the paradox of thrift. The mathematics behind economic contractions helps explain why these situations become difficult to reverse. Imagine a community where one family's reduced spending becomes another family's reduced income. If enough households delay purchases, businesses experience declining revenue. In response, businesses may reduce hiring or postpone investment. Those affected employees then cut back their own spending, transmitting financial stress outward through multiple layers of the economy. A relatively modest initial shock can therefore produce disproportionately large consequences through repeated cycles of reaction. Yet the legacy of the Great Depression extends beyond economics into identity and habit formation. Individuals who lived through the era often carried specific money behaviors throughout the remainder of their lives. Many became exceptionally cautious with debt. Others developed strong preferences for emergency savings. Some reused household items extensively, avoided unnecessary consumption, or maintained persistent skepticism toward financial institutions. These behaviors were not simply products of personality. They reflected adaptive responses to experiences that fundamentally reshaped perceptions of security. Previously parallels therefore become most useful when viewed as lenses rather than forecasts. The purpose of studying the Great Depression is not to conclude that identical outcomes will occur again. Economic institutions, monetary frameworks, and regulatory systems have evolved considerably. However, the underlying tendencies of human psychology remain remarkably consistent. Fear can spread quickly, optimism can become excessive, Narratives of permanence often accompany temporary conditions. People continue to search for certainty in systems that are inherently dynamic. One of the more subtle lessons involves the distinction between control and influence. Individuals cannot determine the direction of national economies, market cycles, or geopolitical developments. Attempting to predict every external variable with precision may create unnecessary anxiety. Yet households retain meaningful influence over certain aspects of financial resilience. Diversification, prudent debt management, maintaining liquidity appropriate to personal circumstances, and developing adaptable skills represent examples of decisions that operate within one's sphere of influence.